Welcome to our workshop! Yay! During the 24-hour stream. For those of you who are brand spanking new here, it is wonderful to have you. Thank you for coming. We are Double Blind. I'm Catherine LaCroix. I started freelancing full-time in 2019. I have a background. I have degrees in journalism and marketing. I don't recommend getting degrees in either of these things. And before Cat Girls, I wrote and published 2 of my own novels, then started doing freelance work. Then we decided to tackle Cat Girls, and now I'm here.
So my history is very similar to hers.
Who are you?
I am double blind. You can also refer to me as Rye or Ryan, whatever's easiest for you. I've been writing pretty much my whole life. I got my associates in arts, and I got a teaching certificate, so I have that useless piece of paper. I wrote my preliminary book, Drive, watched it fail, drowned myself in sorrows, and then started working on Cat Girls with her, and has led us up to this point.
Yeah, both of us, our very first 2 books, like, totally flopped. Like, my first 2 books and then Drive for him, like, didn't go anywhere. So we really like to help out other writers, other independent publishers, other self-publishers. It's a very wide world. There's lots of space. There's lots of readers. And it's important to know what you're getting yourself into when you first come into this. So some important panel notes. There's certain things to know when coming to our panel. So everything that we discuss is based on our own experiences and research. We do not make 6 figures a year, anime figures or otherwise. That's like a big question. Like, aren't you authors? Don't you make tons of money? No, we're doing our best. All questions are welcome. Please don't hesitate to ask them. So throw them in chat, and once we have like a break between slides, or if we're just kind of like pausing and looking, we will answer them as swiftly and as accurately as possible. Please be respectful of others. Please, please, please. That's the biggest rule, is just keep an open mind. Like, let's have a good conversation.
Okay, so to start off, what is ChatGPT? I know all of us basically know at this point, but it's important to go over that first. ChatGPT is a program that takes a prompt, applies labels, searches its data set, and provides what it believes to be the most appropriate response. There are many AI writing programs out there, but we're going to focus on ChatGPT as it is the most widely used. It's the one that everybody thinks of whenever it comes to writing essays, stories, business letters, you name it.
I want to also preface this with, there are so many videos out there on TikTok, on YouTube, on social, talking about how you can now make $10,000 a month just by publishing your ChatGPT book. And no, please don't do this. Right now, Amazon has 5,500 plus books a day being published. A lot of them are ChatGPT assisted or written, and it is making it so freaking hard for people that really love to write to like get their names out there, and nobody's seeing the ChatGPT ones either. It's just all this like ocean of garbage.
So by using it and throwing it in here, all you're doing is making it worse for everybody else, because this is already a really tough industry to get into just in general, with or without the use of AI. But by adding so much of that, you add to the pool, which makes it harder for people who are actually writing their stories, developing their characters, world building, putting every ounce of work that they have into it. You're making it even harder, any of their work, to get seen. It just adds to the pool. So to add what she said, there are about 5,500 books estimated releasing every single day. So even if you have the next hit American novel, let's say you have the best idea in the world, it doesn't matter. If nobody can find it, it may as well not exist.
So how does ChatGPT curate its data set? I looked around for a while yesterday, and ChatGPT and OpenAI will not release just how many books have been thrown into it. Like, it won't talk. Like, no one wants to say. There was a CNN article I read and a couple other things that estimated about 200,000 plus books have been fed into ChatGPT. The other thing that is very important to know about any AI at all is that it's not actually coming up with anything on its own ever. It is taking things from a data set and it is supplying it to whatever you plug into it. So it has to have scraped information for it to apply labels to. Most of these books were pirated, used without permission, taken outside of the public domain. It's not good. So imagine pouring years of your life, thousands of hours into your work, only to have it scraped by AI and then utilized in someone else's prompt. I included this picture off of ChatGPT's website to show, like, this is what it's doing. So a prompt is a sample from our prompt data set. So they have to feed it. Like, it doesn't generate anything without something fed into it already. And then it assigns a label. So then the label gets assigned to it. And then it spits out whatever it plugged in based on your prompt where it assigned those labels. This week and like 3 months ago, I heard that AO3 was recently scraped for all of its stuff, and people are just feeding that into AI. So it's like technically not legally allowed to scrape without permission, but people are doing it anyway. And just by like, the more people perpetuate using AI like this, the more people are going to scrape without permission because they can sell those data sets and they can use them because people are using their service. So it's not helping anyone.
Something that's really important to note about that as well. You might sit there and think, oh, well, they did it illegally. They weren't supposed to do that. The people who did it, that information is not going to be shared with the people who are doing it supposedly with permission, so like ChatGPT and such. That doesn't matter. Once it generates something, the other AIs are also going to catch wind of it, and that's going to become part of its data set as well. It's only a matter of time until all of that information that was scraped ends up in the public, and nobody will know where it came from. So you just continue to feed into the AI that way. But yes, to basically parrot exactly what she said, the AI cannot actually create anything. It doesn't work like that. If it doesn't have data to retrieve, if it doesn't have data to feed from, to actually help it learn and teach it things, then it can't spit anything out, which is why there are so many large data samples, because it needs pretty much like hundreds of thousands, possibly even millions of prompts in order to recognize patterns, word choice, styles, etc., etc.
And the reason for this workshop that we're going to get into is why it is creating bad habits for writers and what we're seeing in the field. This is not all like a soapbox of double blind is getting up and screaming at you about AI. Like, there's really little we can do to stop it, but I really wanted to talk about, because I have seen it a lot, what it's doing to writers and what it looks like in your stories and how it's not good. Like, it's very repetitive. So this isn't just like AI is bad. Like, we have examples and we're going to show you like what it's doing to affect fiction. It's just important to know like the backdrop of ChatGPT, how it works, like what it's pulling from. So ChatGPT's limitations, I pulled these directly from their website. Like, it's right on there underneath the about. ChatGPT sometimes writes plausible sounding but incorrect or nonsensical answers, which is super great if you're trying to do research. You try and ask it a question. Just like for kicks, I was writing an article about a certain graveyard, and I went and I asked it a question, and it started pulling stats from like Arlington National Cemetery, which was not the one I needed. Like, I didn't need any of the stats from the cemetery, but it was like applying it to that. So do research, like make sure to Google. Secondly, the model is often excessively verbose and overuses certain phrases. These issues arise from biases in the training data. Trainers prefer longer answers that look more comprehensive and well-known over-optimization issues. So the website and the creators both know what it's doing and that it's not a good thing. And we're still like kicking it in. And I hear too many people say, I put in my ideas and it writes them better. And I assure you, it is not writing them better. I promise you, it is not writing them better. It is adding a lot of superfluous details, excessively verbose statements, and the same phrase to everything over and over and over. So the general overall limitations of AI and storytelling, like beyond these, AI will not remember your characters, plot lines, or minute details. It cannot understand context. I don't remember who told us in Discord, but they knew somebody in another server who was trying to use ChatGPT to write their whole story, and they kept getting mad because ChatGPT wouldn't remember the plot lines, wouldn't remember the details, wouldn't remember like this character had this thing or this character had this thing, because it can't. It will never remember that. ChatGPT will always provide the same story beats, timbre, rhythm, sentence length, word choice, and descriptions, no matter the genre, character, or prompt. And I'll show you that in a few minutes, but it will always be the same.
Lastly, AI is not human. This is a very obvious point, but it's very essential to remember that it cannot feel, express emotions, think, or relive memories. By using ChatGPT, the human experience from storytelling is removed. You are not telling a story anymore. You are taking an idea that you wrote on a notepad and saying, hey, can you write a story for that? And it's going to just spit it out for you. You did none of the work. Everybody has ideas, but a bot writing a story about the human experience is not a story.
So, what happens to authors when they use ChatGPT? In editing multiple stories generated with ChatGPT, I have personally found the language is always the same. There is no variance, no voice. The unique perspective is completely lost. I've read sci-fi, high fantasy. Someone tried to write their memoir. I've seen like general fiction. It's all sounds the same, like all of it. And then when you have some of your own writing and then you plug it into ChatGPT to write the rest, and it is jarring. It's like a second author who just came in. And Rye came up with this term because it's perfect. So it's like the second author who moonlights as an auctioneer has taken over the narrative. It feels like anytime like furniture or a room comes in, ChatGPT describes it like they are trying to auction off to people.
It was hilarious because, yeah, the difference is night and day. It's stark, and it likes using that word a lot. We'll get to that in a second. But yeah, it sat there and it reminded me of somebody who was trying to auction off furniture or high-priced items rather than someone trying to tell me a story. Like, for example, if we took Matt or Tristan, they're both going to describe things very differently, and that's going to be seen in their narrative. But ChatGPT reads the same way every time. So even if you're sitting there like, oh, well, you know, I just used it to generate a paragraph or two or do this or that, you know, I didn't have to do all my writing, you're still relying on it as a crutch, and it's going to affect your writing style tremendously, all for the worse. It's extremely jarring to see this overly verbose paragraph and then some choppy dialogue underneath. It's really, really jarring because that sort of stuff really sticks out, because the other part shows me, okay, you're trying to learn as a writer, you're trying to build chemistry between characters, you're trying to understand sentence structure, grammatical rules, so on and so forth. And then we have a ChatGPT paragraph that makes it seem like you went to Oxford. It's disturbing.
So kind of going over it again, this is the list of bad habits that this creates. So you're going to see a lot of superfluous adjectives, over-explanation, intensely repetitive language. The world is no longer seen through the character's eyes like a memoir. No one was there. No one felt it like you did or experienced the same emotions like you did. Even growing up, I have a younger brother, and both of us went through a lot of shit, but both of us internalized it completely differently, even though we were there at the exact same time, in the exact same moment. Like, he didn't feel what I felt and vice versa. So you destroy all of that. Like, where did your unique voice and feelings go? It'll sound like everything else generated in ChatGPT. So now we bring two books close together, and like, it doesn't matter what the genre is. Oh, both of these were written by ChatGPT. Okay. And then, like Rye was just saying, single note storytelling and characters, you're not going to have that depth anymore, or feel like what these characters are feeling, or have any complexity to them. They're very just straightforward one note.
It'll be very easy if you take 10 of these books and put them all side by side. They're all going to read exactly the same way.
So let's talk about ChatGPT's red flag shop and the things that start triggering when I read something if I figure it out. These are some words and phrases that ChatGPT overuses to death. Testament, juxtaposition, a reminder of, a stark contrast to. There's a long drawn out description, and yet like it really loves like the contrast of things. It creates descriptions by using a contrast. It uses the word masterpiece to death, a mix of or a blend of, especially at the end of dialogue tags. So it'll be like, she said a mix of joy and grief. Like, it'll have both. It always has both. It's never just one thing.
Some other ones that I've personally noticed too is a symbol of, a remnant of. It really likes the word echo, the kind of, more X than Y, more art than X. Not only X, but also Y. It likes contrasting and comparing two features a lot of times of the same thing, whether it's a person, an item, a place, a building, it doesn't matter. It really likes to draw references to something else to paint a picture to you instead of just describing it in its own voice.
I admit, like, if I feel like it's probably ChatGPT, the moment I see the word echo, I'm like, nope, send it. It uses it for titles, for sex, like SECTS, for anything that it possibly can. And I want you guys to keep these words at the top of mind as we get to the slide. First, though, I want to talk about what labels means. And this will have some examples for you guys. So it's important to understand what labels mean when you're doing it. So ChatGPT assigns labels or keywords to every request, then searches its database to create a response that encompasses those labels. Here's the problem when it comes to fiction. So I asked ChatGPT to write a character description in the style of the Count of Monte Cristo. I don't know if you've ever read The Count of Monte Cristo, but Alexander Dumas is a fantastic writer. His narrative is always very elegant, but has this bite to it that you're sitting there going, I think he just made fun of this guy and I love it. So ChatGPT said, here is a description written in the lush, dramatic, and slightly ornate style, reminiscent of The Count of Monte Cristo. So it took lush, dramatic, and slightly ornate, and this is what it gave me. There was in the bearing of Monsieur Leonard Vorel a kind of elegance that did not announce itself loudly, but whispered its presence with the insistence of velvet. Tall and lean, with a figure shaped more by necessity than vanity, he moved with the slow, precise grace of a man who weighed each step as if the earth itself were his adversary. His features were carved with the meticulous cruelty of a sculptor in love with shadows, high cheekbones, a narrow aquiline nose, and eyes the color of tarnished silver, glinting with the knowledge no man should carry unpunished. All right, that doesn't sound anything like him, but sure, that's lush, dramatic, and slightly ornate. So then I asked ChatGPT to write me a character description in the style of Brandon Sanderson. Brandon Sanderson is a high fantasy author, modern day, who writes the Stormlight Archive, Mistborn. Like, everyone knows who Brandon Sanderson is. He was like the furthest thing I could think of from the Count of Monte Cristo.
And yet, Brandon Sanderson's style is thoughtful, immersive, and layered. Lush, dramatic, and slightly ornate versus thoughtful, immersive, and layered, often focusing on characters with inner conflicts, unique abilities, and strong ties to the world's magic system or lore. Elrond Thorne had the kind of presence that made people pause, not because he demanded attention, but because the world seemed to dim slightly around him. He wore his long coat like a shield, stitched with threads of iridescent silver that shimmered faintly in the dark, each strand a remnant of light captured during a binding. His eyes were a pale, flickering gold, unsettling at first glance, mesmerizing at the second, and they never quite seemed to look at the person in front of him, but rather through them, as if he were studying the idea of them. So I think it's really, really funny that this reads pretty much exactly the same as the above paragraph, and that it noticed Brandon likes to use the word binding with a capital B a lot. This makes no sense. A binding is how people move and control gravity and float and stick to things. So that makes no sense here whatsoever. So I can't understand the context or understand what a binding does. It just thought, oh, well, he uses the word binding a lot, and so it applied it here. But taking both of these into account, even if, let's say, best case scenario, AI was like, hey, you know what? I bet I can perfectly replicate it. The amount of data you would need on a single author could not be written by a single author in their entire lifetime. Even as quickly as Brandon puts out his books, there is no way in the fresh, hot pits of hell he is ever going to write enough books to serve as a valid data set for AI.
Yeah, if you've read either of their books, this doesn't sound like either of them. Like, this isn't the style of Brandon Sanderson or Alexander Dumas. This is ChatGPT. And the more you read both of these, the more they're the same damn paragraph. Like, they're the same length, they're the same rhythm, they're the same timbre, they use the same kind of descriptions, they use the same overly flowery purple prose that, by the way, like, neither of these authors use. Both paragraphs are the exact same size and length, and all of the sentences are like the exact same size and length. So where is the voice here? Like, where is the uniqueness? This could be the same damn character. They just made him French in one of them.
You'll see that it does this every single time, no matter what kind of data, no matter what kind of style you want it to copy, no matter who you reference, even if you throw your own writing into it, it always comes out that same way.
Now that you've seen my inputs and you've seen our slide of shit that it uses all the time, I'm going to show you some excerpts from real books that are published on Amazon. So here's the first one. This was straight out of the book. I just typed it up. In the sea of towering skyscrapers and the high-tech buzz that is downtown Tokyo, the dojo was an oasis. Situated in the heart of the city, it was a juxtaposition of tradition and modernity. The exterior was sleek, decked out in gleaming glass and polished steel, mirroring the surrounding building's ultra-modern aesthetic. Yet, it managed to exude a sense of serenity amidst the city's constant bustle. Once outside, it felt like stepping into a different world.
Drum roll for the ChatGPT version.
Hey, ChatGPT, describe a dojo in the center of Tokyo. In the heart of Tokyo, where trains roared overhead and neon signs flickered like restless spirits, there stood a dojo so quiet it felt like it held a deep breath. From the outside, it looked almost forgotten, a wooden structure pressed between towering office buildings and sleek glass storefronts. But step through its narrow gate and the city vanished behind you, like stepping through the edge of the dream. Inside, the dojo was a world apart.
Different world apart. It uses all the exact same wording, the exact same phrase, the exact same timbre and rhythm.
And it's like the same sentence structure and the same sentence length, and it hits every point all the way down.
This is why it infuriates us, because once you start noticing these things, you can't unnotice them. So as soon as somebody sends something to me, I'm just sitting there like, wait a second, hang on. Was this book published by ChatGPT? And then I'll throw some of the sentences in the book, usually published works that I've seen a lot of people have been throwing out on Amazon, and it comes up with almost the exact same thing.
The really, really frustrating part is that those detectors that are like, hey, is this ChatGPT? 9 times out of 10, they're not right. So it's not great. Like, it's not great to just kind of throw them in there. And I feel sometimes like I'm a crazy conspiracy theorist because I'm just looking at this and I'm like, this is all ChatGPT. I feel like if I can go into ChatGPT and ask it to describe something very vague, the plugs you're seeing here are exactly what I am putting in there. Like, describe a dojo at the center of Tokyo, and then that's what it does.
Yeah, it's really frustrating because exactly like you said, it does take some of the words and some of the sentence structure away from writers, but I'm not concerned about that because you would have to copy it so distinctly like ChatGPT that it's going to stick out immensely. You could write something that describes these same things, but in a character's voice instead. Add his own thoughts to it, and you give it character, you give it personality. So I'm not personally worried about that, but exactly like she said, it does make you sound like a paranoid person because at the end of the day, there's no way to 100% prove that anybody has used it. It can't be done unless you saw them and recorded them doing it in person. There's no way to prove that. But most of the time we can tell because even if you do try to throw it into like an AI detector, a lot of what people will do now is they'll generate prompts and then they'll edit it a little bit to make it a little less verbose, to make it a little less wordy, add some of their own words to it to kind of throw people off.
You can kind of look at this, because I love M dashes and I use them a lot too. So don't worry about M dashes. I was going to say you can kind of look at this as how to write a story that's from your character's voice as opposed to I'm going to get claim that I'm using ChatGPT all the time, because I have one more expert on here and you can see just from the first one how close they are in all aspects. Like I'm M dash aside, look at the descriptions, like look at how everything lines up exactly to ending how the dojo was a world apart to stepping into a different world. Like, I'm going to tell you about this character by the time we get to the end of this and you'll tell me what you think that he is, like what kind of character you think he is. If you're reading your book and you can't tell me what kind of character you have and why they're seeing their things like in their voice, then you need to go through and like make sure it's in their voice. Yeah, Valerie, it stole my work too. It stole Ophelia. It stole my first 2 books. I'm also upset. That's why I didn't want to turn this into like a giant soapbox. I want to get out there that not only is it a very bad thing, it's also teaching people very bad habits. So I see that people who used to use it think, oh, that was just making my books better. And it's not. This kind of stuff is not what makes your books better. Like your voice, your character's voice, your feelings, your perspectives, your layers, that's what's going to make your books better.
You won't learn anything by even using it as an example. I would suggest that if you want to learn how to be a good writer, you read books and you write. You do those 2 things. That is what you do. pull up a thesaurus and a dictionary. If you want some help with word choice, never, ever, ever, ever use ChatGPT. It is going to teach you bad habits. The entire point of this workshop is to express why it teaches you bad habits and why you will not become a good writer by using this.
And what it looks like at the end of the day. So if you publish your book out of ChatGPT, it's going to look like the other 7 million books out there that were also published by ChatGPT. And eventually readers will start to realize, oh, this is all the same book. Here's another book excerpt. So this is straight out of the book. Before us lay the exquisite cake I brought over, a veritable feast for the eyes and undoubtedly the palate. The purchase looked like the creation of a master pastry chef. It was more art than dessert. A luxurious masterpiece made with utmost attention to detail. It was almost too beautiful to eat. The delicate confection was encased in a blanket of glossy fondant. It shimmered in the candlelight, exuding an air of sophistication. So that's the book. Here's ChatGPT. Hey ChatGPT, please describe an expensive birthday cake. The cake's decorations were nothing short of artistry. It may feature hand-sculpted sugar flowers, crafted to perfection to resemble real blooms from a rare botanical garden. Intricate sugar lacework, pearlized accents, and edible gold or silver leaf might grace the tiers, elevating its aesthetics to a whole new level. Of course, such a masterpiece would require the expertise of world-class pastry chef who specializes in creating bespoke, high-end cakes for elite clientele.
Interesting. Isn't that super interesting? We see all of the same wording, the exact same emphasis on certain features. It talks about how it's nothing short of artistry. It mentions how it's a masterpiece. They make mention of the chef. It's the highest end that they've ever seen. They use all the exact same terms and terminology, all the same rhythm, the same word choice.
There's a difference between overly repetitive language and repetition for the sake of your narrative. And one feels like it fits in the character's voice and it should be there. And the other feels like this.
Like looking at these, can you even tell me what the personality of the character is? Like looking at these, do they all read like the same person? Do they all read like different people? Because to me, they all read like the exact same person. I don't get any personality here.
Something that we talked about in our characterization panel, and something that we reiterate a lot because we are character writers, is that everything, whether it's first person or third person, everything your character has been through their whole life is going to reflect in what they see and what they feel and what they're noticing and what they're focusing on. We like to talk about how, so in Cat Girls, Matt has a group of 4 girls. And we joke about like all 4 of them look out the window, but all 4 of them are going to notice something different based on who they are and like what they have experienced so far. So Kiki's a hunter, so she would notice probably there's forests outside. I bet there's good encroachers out there for me to go hunt. Saris has a little bit of a carpentry background, so she might notice like how the window is made and what the glass is made of, and like she has that kind of attention to detail. Cannoli is not looking out the window. She's noticing something shiny over off to the side. And Raven's just like, it's a fucking window. Like, she doesn't understand the purpose of this project. But that's 4 completely different characters all looking at the exact same window. When you have something like this, there's no characterization at all. The character that you're looking at, like the book excerpts are from, is supposed to be like an office worker otaku who loves anime. I don't see that in any of this.
Do you read office worker otaku in any of this? Because I sure as hell don't.
Yeah, you stick of ass. You get nothing from this that shows this character. So this is what we're talking about when we say it's really important that everything your character notices makes sense for your character. So it's okay if you use flowery language. Like my first 2 books, my main character is very poetic and has a lot of like really beautiful language that she uses, and she's very well learned. She doesn't sound like this at all. She just has a very wide vocabulary, and that's just how she speaks. And Jacqueline Carey, who I take a lot of inspiration, writes her characters the same way, where they're very intelligent and have very wide vocabularies, and like, but it makes sense because that's who they are, and they just see the beauty in things. This doesn't feel like the beauty in things. It just, like Rye said, it feels like an auctioneer. Like, this is what I would hear at an auction to buy the...
What a lot of people may not understand, too, if you're newer to writing or if you're still trying to learn how to get your character to stick out, how to make their voice unique, is Even when it's in third person, every character is going to notice something different. Like how she used the window example. If the 4 cat girls in Matt's party each brought a big confectionery. We'll use the cake as an example. If they all brought a different cake to the table, they're all going to describe it a little differently. They're all going to use different words. Raven's going to be like, well, I just picked the most expensive one there and I didn't give a fuck. I don't know, this one has flowers on it. Happy birthday. She's not going to go into it that deeply. Whereas Kiki might sit there and say, oh, well, I know you've been going through a really hard time. Her focus there isn't the cake, but on how Matt's feeling. So there's a different focus there. She knows that the cake that she got is expensive. She's not caring about the cake. She's caring about what sentiment she's trying to deliver by giving him the cake. Those kinds of things are what helps separate your narrative, whether it's third person or first person.
Cannoli is a baker and a very good cook, and she might use a few of these words, but it would never be like this. Like, this is so over the top in the moment and jarring that it doesn't make sense in the narrative. Like, she would talk about how she put a lot of time into the icing and like wanted to make sure that everything looked perfect and the names and stuff. Like, it would be more focused on the love that she poured into this cake and why she chose these colors. Like, oh, I picked red because you have the red streak in your hair. Like, she would notice outside things that aren't just about the damn cake.
That's what's going to separate your characters and help them feel real, so that even if the person reading, like for example, my mother-in-law, that's Lynx's mom, she will sometimes say, I didn't like this about the book, this kind of ticked me off, that kind of ticked me off, but I don't know why. She and I will look at it and be like, oh, well, this part was repetitive, this part was overly depressing, this didn't sound like the character. So even if people don't understand what it is they don't like about a passage, they're going to understand that they just don't like it.
So this is where we see it used most often, and we talked about it a little bit, but especially in the stories where like the writer wrote a little bit and then they plugged it into ChatGPT and then they wrote a little bit and plugged it in. I see a lot of descriptions of buildings, whether exterior or interior. That seems to be a big struggle for new and even existing writers on like how to describe a room and the things in the room. Character descriptions are a big one, and then fight scenes.
You won't see it so much with dialogue, because it seems to have a hard time understanding dialogue tags and creating natural conversation flow. But anytime there's a descriptor of something, like describe this, describe that, that's when it's most prevalent and noticeable.
And I have seen it used in dialogue, and it's usually characters expositing at each other. So like just big dumps of information, and then also big dumps of information back and forth. Like I said, it doesn't feel conversational at all. It just feels like, oh yes, let me tell you the tale. And it goes on for like 3 pages. I'm like, we need to stop. Somebody needs to take a break.
It can't help but be expository. It has to overly explain everything. Like even in dialogue, it feels this incessant need to describe everything in great detail.
It had walls. There were 4 of them. It felt roomy as a descriptor that I would much rather read than the building exudes sophistication.
As would I, like, because depending on the character, that might be funny, actually. It felt roomy. Like he doesn't care. He just wants to go to sleep or he's bored.
That one line tells me more about your character than any of the cake or the dojo or anything. Like, I now know more about that.
Those little things are what help make a character feel real. So yeah, I like that better. We recommend just stop using ChatGPT entirely. Don't go to it. Don't rely on it for anything. Just do not plug any prompts into it. Instead, practice. Take a journal, go to a coffee shop or a library, somewhere that fits your needs in order to get creative, whatever that may be, whether it's music, staying at home, getting comfy, whatever suits you. Sit down, write descriptions of the people you see. What do they wear? How do they walk? How do they talk? When do they raise their voice? People will have tendencies to move their body a certain way. They might lean their weight onto one leg. They might curl a lock of hair to help them help alleviate nervousness. These little kinds of tics help characters feel more real. So you can describe these little things to hint to your reader, hey, maybe this character's feeling happy or sad or nervous or depressed. Practice active listening when you're speaking with others, is basically what I'm trying to say. Just keep track of their inflections. And then think of ways to apply that to your own dialogue. You could have a dialogue with a character. I don't really agree with that. Matt said leaning his weight onto one leg. He's getting relaxed. He has no intention of leaving the conversation right now. There's a lot said there just by the fact that he leaned his weight onto one leg while he's talking. Another example would be if the character puts one foot behind them. that's kind of an indicator like, okay, I gotta go. I want to get out of here. Stop talking to me. Little things like that.
And buildings. Practice describing buildings. I used to be very bad at describing buildings, and I had to learn for Cat Girls because our islands are very different. One thing that I did for Cat Girls, once we figured out exactly how we were going to tackle each island, like She Island being like Victorian England and Sun Island having very Asian in style buildings, I pulled up a lot of houses and buildings and architecture from many years and like went through and read a lot of articles describing different parts of them and what the architecture was called, and then consider your character. So, for example, with Matt, when he gets to Sun Island, he'll describe the buildings with very basic shapes like swoops and swirls, and like it looked kind of like a wing, and he goes at it with geometry, where you meet Tristan and Tristan knows the name of the shapes, the name of the buildings, the eras that they became popular, because it's something that he would have studied. Like, he reads everything he can get his hands on, and he had a lot of time to do that on his islands. You have to know, like, would my character know this? Like, would they actually have any interest in this, or are they just going to like overall describe it? But it's good to know different styles of housing, different styles of building, and you learn a lot that way, which is really fun. Take notes. And then for fight scenes, one thing that Ryan and I actually do a lot when we have a big fight scene in the series is we kind of have a mock battle, especially if it gets hand to hand. Like, we'll kind of play it out and see where hands and feet and stuff wind up to make sure that what we're doing like makes sense. Another thing that I like to do is I like to go on YouTube and find professionals in martial arts and the weapons that I'm describing. I listen to them talk for a while. I try and practice like writing it out and describing it. There's a scene where Naima and Karthik practice an Indian martial art, and I watched a guy do it with like a khopesh and a scimitar. So he said that was traditional. So I'm like, oh, cool. So I could deviate a little bit with that with Naima and explain it. But I watched that for like half an hour to try and sit there and like describe it all and make sure that it was accurate. So it's really important, even if you're writing a very high fantasy or something that doesn't really exist, root it in reality. That's what makes it feel real for people, is these kinds of details.
And try to look at it this way, is whenever you're doing this kind of research, you're gaining knowledge. Nothing is wasted on a writer. You can use everything that you've ever learned, experienced, felt to your advantage whenever you write characters. So at the very least, you gained knowledge. You have some nifty information now on Indian fighting styles. That's really cool. And you can use that to your characters.
Yeah, like we joke as writers that we have a working knowledge of way too many things. Like, great, this is probably useful for an episode of Jeopardy or two. Like, I'm not a master at everything, but I know enough working knowledge to add these things in. But that's a good thing. It's good to know a lot of different things, because when you build your world, it'll feel more real.
I agree.
We have your attention now. Like Ryan mentioned earlier, further practice and learning, reading is an integral part of writing. At the very, 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 very least, make sure that you're reading as many books in the genre that you write for as you can. Popular books, unpopular books, older books, whatever you can get your hands on, read it, because that's going to teach you what you like about it, what you're going to take from it, like the voice that you can use and add or subtract or kind of go around.
It's really important to, exactly like she said, take notes on things, figure out exactly what you like about stuff, figure out why you don't like stuff. It's very important to try and actively read. Picture what's going on in your head and slow down your reading. Slow it down until you can understand what it is that what you're taking in. And you will start to find your style. You'll start to find, oh, well, I liked it when a character did X, Y, and Z, and he had this kind of personality about him that made it very difficult to hate him. That's great. And you can learn things about other stories that you dislike, and you can use those to your advantage to write characters that you want people to hate, scenarios you want them to despise, situations that would make anybody uncomfortable. All of it is useful information. So as you do that, you'll understand how different voices and perspectives are spread across the genre. What you want to do is build your voice. That's the main goal here. And if you use ChatGPT, it is not going to help you that way. Anybody who thinks it's going to help them is wrong. It's just straight up wrong. Nothing beats experience. And you'll gain more experience by simply writing and reading more and then just sharing it with your friends and family as needed.
Yeah, like in our Count of Monte Cristo versus Brandon Sanderson example, like I have enjoyed every single page of Count of Monte Cristo, and it's a huge book. And so is Brandon Sanderson's novels. And they are such distinct voices, and I have learned a ton from both of them and each of them separately. But asking ChatGPT to write like them, I didn't learn a damn thing. It wrote the same thing in ChatGPT voice. Like, there was nothing to take away from there except one was a French dude and the other one used binding wrong.
Actually, to quickly take an example from that too, I'm reading through the Stormlight Archive and I'm reading Rhythm of War. So that is the 4th book in his Stormlight Archive series. And anytime I read any one of the characters' perspectives, I'm like, yeah, that sounds like that character. That sounds exactly what they would focus on. Kaladin is very depressed. He's constantly moping. He's racist, honestly. He's struggling with his own inadequacies, and it reflects in his narrative. Shalyn is a know-it-all, and she thinks she's smarter than everybody. She thinks she's wittier than everybody. And sometimes she's right. And she has a very scholarly background, so she uses a lot of big words. Adolin is your golden retriever. I love Adolin. Adolin is a fashionista, basically. He is the kind of guy who will spend an hour in his closet looking for the perfect doublet, the perfect vest, and making sure the colors go together really well. How does the filigree look on that? That, and his narrative reflects that. That's what we're talking about when it comes to what a character focuses on. Like, even in third person, it's going to reflect in their word choice and what they choose to focus on.
If you get to a section and it sounds very jarring and it sounds like all of a sudden it is no longer in the voice that it was before, then it's time to reevaluate the word choice. Like, I know with Matt, one of the biggest things that I did when we started editing book 1, on the chapters that I wrote, I gave Matt some bigger words than I should have. So I went back and I killed them and I gave him smaller words and it fixed it. Not saying Matt's stupid. I use too big of words sometimes. That's a me problem, not a Matt problem.
Yeah, that's exactly the thing. Because Matt doesn't have that kind of background. Like, he has a decent vocabulary. It's not a bad vocabulary, but he's not so well learned like Tristan or Kailu or any of the other characters in the story. So going back and deleting some of his words or even just changing it to be simpler words helped him feel more like himself. So something you'll hear us say all the time is that you need to not only find your voice, but find your character's voice. And finding those voices is a trial. It can take a very, very, very long time. I actually had not found a solid voice for myself until about these last couple of years, really. I feel like I finally settled into my voice. And mind you, I've been writing since my early teens, like publishing to the internet. And it took that long for me to feel comfortable with it. So be patient with yourself, be patient with your characters. Let them try and talk to you, as weird as that may sound to some of you. Try to let the story speak to you. You're always going to be learning. You will always keep learning. I fear that a lot of people get caught up with the idea of like, oh, well, I want to make sure it's the best it can be. Okay, fine. Make it the best you can be in that moment. That's the important part, is like, did you put your best foot forward in that moment? If you want to be a good writer, you're going to keep learning until the day you're dead. So it would be useless to sit there and be like, oh, 10 years later, you look back at your first book and you're like, it's kind of cringe. I would have changed this, and this. Well, yeah, but you didn't have as much experience back then as you do now. That's the difference with creative mediums, is that with creative mediums, you're going to always notice your style changing. Your word choice is going to change over time. How you construct sentences, how you speak with characters, all of that is going to change over time. That's just the nature of creative mediums. It's not something that has a hard, defined slope of what's good and what's bad. They don't work that way.
And guys,
yeah, for sure.
Remember, at the end of the day, your story is awesome. So no matter where you're at in your journey, whether you haven't started writing or you're just starting to write or you're just getting halfway through your book or you're starting to edit, keep going. Don't stop. Like, it's a marathon. It's not a race. It takes a lot.
I'll second that. The most important part is just staying consistent and just write.
Now, any more questions?
Any question at all. We are completely opening the floor.
It doesn't have to be about ChatGPT. It can be about anything at all. How do I instantly become best writer with no work at all? I absolutely have no idea because I don't make enough money to give you that advice.
How do you modify the voice of the characters reliably enough to fit with their view? That's going to take time and practice, and that's going to depend on the person. It depends on what you're emphasizing in your story, what kind of elements you're focusing on. A lot of times when I'm sitting there and I'm thinking about the next story I want to write, I think about, okay, what focuses, or I should say, what is the purpose of this story? Like, what do I want to say? Like, if I can condense what I want to say in one sentence, what would I say? And usually that will help me, that'll help guide not just the narrative of the story in general, but the rest of the characters as well. The characters will grow over time. I will say that Matt and his team of girls, they are all very, very, very different from how we originally envisioned them. Every single one of them changed in distinct ways that makes them stick out more.
So what I want to add to that is the fact that before we knew their voice for sure, we would actually just kind of write it, like the narrative in general, what was happening, and kind of step by step have the dialogue in there. For example, Kiki was actually like very much our tsundere bitch at the beginning. Like when we went back and edited her, she was mean to Saphira. Like she said the meanest shit. Then we introduced Raven and I'm like, we can't have two. This is too many. So it took us a long time to actually like fit Kiki into where she's at. But since we didn't know, like we just kind of had her react to things. And then we went back and edited it once we figured out a voice for her. Like, oh, okay, it clicks. Like this is where she clicks into the whole party. This is where she mixes in. It was a lot of writing it out and just getting the chapters down, because writing and making a habit of writing is all about being disciplined and making sure that you are getting up and doing it every single day. It doesn't matter how many words. Time yourself, do an hour. If you get 100 words, 1,000 words, some of those words are going to work. Some of them are going to look like crap later. But once you feel it lock in, like you'll know this is where I want them to be. But it can take 200,000 words until you feel that.
The writing process is not an obstacle. And a lot of people who use artificial intelligence, who use AI, seem to see it as such. Like it's something to be rid of. It's a creative process. That's what it is. The creative process is part of the fun. So if you're not enjoying it, writing might not be for you. Now, I want to make something very, very, very clear though. There are going to be days where you don't want to write and you should still write. Anybody who's into anything, whether it's a hobby like video games, anime, it doesn't matter what it is. You obviously have days where you just don't feel like watching it, or you just don't feel like playing a game. You're gonna have days like that. It doesn't mean writing isn't for you. Just want to make that very clear.
So Rai said that he just recently found his style in the last couple of years, which is fair, but everyone has a different ruler. And like, I found my writing voice, honestly, when I wrote my first 2 books. Like it finally hit me how I wanted to do things. I've just improved it and honed it down. I will never stop developing my style. I know that in 5 years, I'm going to be having a different voice and different style. Like it's like artistic style. You watch a lot of artists, like we work with a ton of artists, and we get to see how it develops and like how it keeps getting better or changing, or they find things that they like a little bit more. It's really cool to see the like, here's my 2011 versus 2021. And usually the 2011, it's not bad. It's just they're improving and they're learning different things. And writing is the exact same way. So I read my first 2 books and they're not bad, but like I've improved so much and I've learned so much about storytelling, and I still have, I feel like, the same voice and the same approach that I do to a lot of things. And it was really, really cool getting to apply it to one of the cat girls in volume 5, because I'm like, oh my gosh, I get to bring her voice back. And I did, but it read just so much better and more fluid, and it came out better to me. Like it felt better to write. It's really important to know it's a process and it's fun and it's supposed to be fun. And if you're not having fun and you're looking at it like an obstacle, then it might not be for you, and that's not a bad thing at all. You have to practice.
You will find a voice that you like. You might stick with it for a couple of years, and then your voice changes again. That's okay. What core skills or experiences do you think new authors need to develop, and how does the AI interfere with those? So there are 3 core skills that I think it very much messes with. That's word choice, sentence structure, and character voice. It messes with voice, I would say, the most. As we've said several times already, the language is very verbose. It's over-explanatory. That's not how people talk in real life. That's how very few people talk in real life, in fact. The narrative should reflect that character, like what they're focusing on and how they're going about their lives. That'll reflect in their narrative whenever they speak. And that's not just dialogue. That is the actual narrative that is explaining things to the reader. That is what I am referring to. Sentence structure and word choice, those are pretty self-explanatory, just because it likes using certain words, it likes over-explaining things. That's what I would say.
100%, you're going to lose the emotion. Remember, you're an auctioneer now, so we're going to talk about this desk and how it is dark oak and ebony and polished, and it's just exuding. It's more art than desk.
To use another example, if we had a dilapidated desk, let's say one that looks like you got it from Goodwill or something like that, it's like 20, 30 years old, and it's a piece of junk. The character might describe some of the attributes about it, and then he'll notice, like for example, he might notice a dark stain on the side and be like, I did not want to know what that dark stain was. Little notes like that help the character explain it in their own way. He's concerned about that dark stain. He doesn't want to think about where that stain came from, and it looks quite old.
Our pizza should be ready, though.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Ooh. Okay, since the pizza is ready, we don't want it to get cold, so we're going to take off.
Please drop us a follow. We also post all of our workshops on YouTube. I post the VODs there, so I'll be sure to post this one there later on so you guys can revisit it and watch it. We need to eat food, Toast! And guess what? Carmine and Chocobo were very sweet, and they got us a pizza, because what darlings they are. You know what, the burbs? Okay. We will be back. See you guys in a little bit.